Welcome to our first lesson on Excel shortcuts for financial modeling. Our first part of the lesson will concern properly selecting cells by using the Control key, the Shift keys, and the Alt keys. So remember that when we're doing financial modeling in the future or just any financial analysis, we will be using the Control, Shift, and Alt keys very often. And depending on how you use these keys, it's going to dramatically affect your efficiencies in your daily work. So let's start from the Control key. So when it comes to the Control key, I recommend that you use your pinky finger. So in other words, your last fifth finger, and use it to press the Control key on your far left. For the Control keys, usually you function the Control key by pressing the buttons simultaneously with other buttons. For instance, if you want to copy something, you would press Control C and then Control V. That's how you use the Control key. So you press it simultaneously with other keys, which is different with the Alt key, where later on you would want to press the keys one by one. So for example, if I say to press the Alt HFS, which is short for Alt Home and font size, you would want to press it one by one. So Alt H, FS, FS for font size. That's how you would use your Alt keys. For the Alt keys, you want to use your thumb to press your Alt keys. That is highly recommended, but it's not like a rule or something. But if you use your thumb, from my experience with many students in our offline classes, your work will get much more faster. Same for the Shift keys, you want to use your fourth finger. So in other words, you want to use your index finger to press the Shift key. And for the Shift keys as well, you want to press simultaneously with other keys. So for example, what we would use our Shift keys is to select a range of data. If you press the Shift key and if you press the arrow keys simultaneously, what Microsoft Excel does is that it selects a certain range of data and allows you to perform functions on the selected cells. All right, so that was on how you would use your Control, Shift, and Alt keys. And moving on to our main part of this first lesson in Excel shortcuts course is how to select cells. So as shown before, usually you would use your Shift keys and your arrow keys to select a range of cells. But there's one more tip on a quicker way to do that, is that you would also want to use the Control key together. So what happens, let's just press the Control keys and the arrow keys and let's see what happens. So it's different from when you're only using your arrow keys. It moves just one by one. It moves to the next cell. If you use the Control key, what it does is it jumps to the next ending points of the data sets. If you use the Control key, it's going to jump down, and finally, if it doesn't have data, it's going to jump to the end of the spreadsheet. And if you want to come back up, you would also use the Control key and the up arrow key to come back and jump around. So this is going to be very handy when our financial model gets very lengthy in lengths. And if you use the Control key and the Shift key simultaneously, what it's going to do is that now it's going to jump and select to the last part of the data set. Again, Control, Shift, and then the right arrow key is going to jump all the way to the right. So rather than selecting these data sets just one by one without the Control key, a much efficient way to select all of these data would be to use the Control, Shift, the down arrow key and then the right arrow key, you would do this much faster. Another way of selecting cells is by using the shift key. So the shift key, what it does is when you do perform the shift key in just a blank Excel spreadsheet, what it does is it just types a space within the cell and erasing the existing data. So you would rarely use this function, but when we combine it with our control keys and the shift keys, it becomes very useful. So let's press the shift key and the space bar together. So shift space together. And what it does is it selects an entire row of cells. So all the way to the end, it selects the entire row. On the other hand, if you want to use the control key and the space bar, what it does is it selects the entire columns. So shift space selects rows, control space selects columns. And remember that we perform financial modeling, so there are a lot of instances where we have to select the entire rows. Sometimes we want to switch places, we want to add rows, we want to delete rows, we want to do formatting for a single row. We're going to use shift space a lot. And what happens if these two are combined? Let's see if we do shift space and then later on if we do a control space, what it does is it selects the entire spreadsheet. There are rare instances where we have to select the entire spreadsheet. So I wouldn't say that it's an extremely important function, but there are another alternative to doing that. It's using the Control and the A key. So Control A is short for Control All. So if you press Control A at the same time as you press Control C or Control X, it's going to select the entire spreadsheet. Although, as I mentioned, the usage would not be that frequent. So to sum up, let's use the control key, shift keys, and the alt keys properly by using the correct fingers. I recommend you use the pinky finger for the control key, the index finger for the shift keys, and the thumb for the alt key. Remember that the control keys and the shift keys, you always want to press other keys simultaneously in order for that function to work. For the alt keys, you want to go one by one. Lastly, we learned how to select the cells. We used how to use the control keys to jump around. We learned how to select the entire row by using shift space and selecting the entire column using control space. And lastly, the entire spreadsheet using control A. And that's it for this lesson.